Hi there, and welcome to Ubuntu, Hearing, Communication, Language, and Connection, the podcast where we explore the power of connection, shared experiences, and overcoming challenges related to hearing loss. I'm Bianka, a mom navigating life with my son Oliver or Ollie, who uses bilateral cochlear implants, and the founder of Olipop Toy Shop, where I create tools and resources for listening and language development.
And I'm Karen McIver-Lux. I'm an audiologist and LSLS certified auditory verbal therapist and co-founder of Thrive Together, a private practice in Toronto, Canada, where I work with individuals of all ages with hearing loss and their families. So I bring both professional expertise and personal experience as someone who uses a cochlear implant and hearing aid.
We're so glad you're here. This is a space for honest conversations where we share insights, stories, and our journeys with hearing, communication, language, and connection.
But we're not here to offer expert advice or tell you what to do. Instead, we're sharing our experiences, our challenges, our joys, and the many ways that we navigate the world.
So whether you're a parent, a professional, someone with hearing loss, or know someone with hearing loss, or just curious about communication and connection, you're welcome here.
So pull up a chair and join us, because I am, because we are.
Welcome to Ubuntu, Hearing, Language, Communication, and Connection. I'm Bianca, and I'm here with my co-host Karen, and we're so excited to launch this podcast on World Hearing Day. What a better time to start a conversation about hearing, language, and connection. Hi, Karen.
I know. Hi, Bianca. It's so good to be with you today. So exciting.
Very much so. Thank you. It feels like it's been a long time going to kind of get this to actually come together. Hey.
Oh, I know, but we met. It almost seems like yes. Well, it seemed like yesterday for me, but it was a year ago almost. No.
May's a year ago.
Oh, is it? That's great. So we met at a conference and in South Africa, in Joburg, and I was invited to do a pre-conference, a day of training for speech language pathologists and auditory verbal practitioners, teachers of the deaf, and audiologists, and anybody else who serves families with hearing loss. And it was so exciting. It was so nice to meet everybody in South Africa, to meet my friends in South Africa, because we're all friends around the world and we're all working towards the same goal, which is helping our little kids who just have hearing loss or deaf or hard of hearing learn to communicate. And in my case, I was talking about helping children learn to listen with their hearing technology and learn to develop spoken language through listening, and to help and guide their parents, who are their primary, all-enduring, most important teachers in life. And what a privilege it was to be there with my friends who are the parents and the professionals who are at this conference. And that's how I met you.
That's how we met you. I was a little bit starstruck because as a parent who knew all about auditory verbal therapy, and to see your name on a book that I was busy reading about that, and now here you are in front of me, and yet so down to earth and just willing to share so much information with us. It was quite an incredible experience. And within your presentation, I'm sure you remember this, but you had actually mentioned how much you loved this idea of Ubuntu that we use here in South Africa. And yeah, this is kind of where the podcast came from. This idea of Ubuntu is that we cannot do anything on our own. We have a community that helps us through everything that we want to do. And why I think this is such a perfect name for what we are wanting to accomplish here, and be able to share with everyone what our journeys have been like. And then I think by virtue of that, others will share their journey as well.
Or our journey and who we are because of everyone around us. It's impossible. It's impossible to describe how much the world around us, the people who come into our lives, really flavor and impact and make our journey the rich one that it is. And so that's why I love this name too, Bianca. So thank you so much for having me with you. It's such a privilege.
It's such a pleasure. It doesn't feel like you're with me. It feels like we're doing this together. In a true Ubuntu spirit.
That's right. So tell me about you. I mean, you told me a lot about you at the conference, but I just want to hear your story. How did this happen?
Well, I suppose my experience with hearing loss has been so different to your experience, in that it's been not me who's directly affected, but of course my son. So yeah, when it was, how many years now? In 2019, I gave birth to my son, and we did not have a newborn hearing screening done because they are not mandated in South Africa. And yeah, fast forward 5 weeks, we were sitting in the lounge, and the door slammed. And the door slammed shut, and he didn't startle. He was fast asleep, and we all got such a big fright. And everyone said, sorry.
They don't even hear that, Bianca.
Or you don't? I'm sorry. It's
no. That's not the dream, guys.
Like the computer just got a mind of its own, and it's just.
Hey, well, you know what? This is good that this is happening, because I'm telling you, maybe this is a message for Zoom to really bring back this musicians feature, because I find that the noise cancellation feature in the background for Zoom is really impacting negatively my therapy sessions, because I can't play background noise. I can't get music with an overlay of background noise, or I can't get any sound effects in the background to help people learn to understand speech in the presence of background noise that we encounter every single day. And that's music. And Zoom cuts it off. They cut it off. And it doesn't matter how clever I can be. I'm not always clever. But, I get all these other people in there that are trying to turn off this noise suppression feature in Zoom, that I can't do my therapy as effectively as I would like to anymore. So,
Quite synchronistic then, hey? That it has to happen on our first recording. But that's something that, beautiful in the sense, and this is exactly what the podcast's about. These are things that we take for granted as hearing people. As a hearing mom, I would have never thought about something like that. And here it is. It's a beautiful example of that. So with, I suppose, like the door slamming, it was, you get a fright and you move on. But if you don't get a fright, there's something wrong. If everyone in the room jumps. And as I said, my son didn't jump. And yeah, fast forward to all of that, we ended up taking him for an ABR, and found out that he had bilateral severe to profound hearing loss just before he was 3 months old. And it's how do I put it? The news is devastating because of your perspective in that moment, because I didn't know anyone else with any sort of hearing loss. So I did, and everything I did know was a very biased, I suppose, is that the right way to put it? Because all I knew was sign language. If somebody's deaf, that's the only way that they can communicate. I had no idea there was an entire world beyond sign language. And so, yeah.
Well, that's it's a coup to the sign language community that they are getting their communication approach out there to the general public, so that the general public understands they're having much greater exposure in the movie industry for sure. But where we don't have enough representation is, what about those kids? What about those adults who have grown up learning to listen and talk with hearing technology? It doesn't mean that, one is better than the other. It's just another way of being with a hearing loss. And so I'm really proud of the signing deaf community for that, but it's unfortunate that the listening and spoken language community hasn't really done as good a job as we could have done, to let you know as a new mom, well, there's lots of things we can do, So that must have been hard for you, huh? Or what was it like for you?
So it's going to sound a little bit funny, but it was actually a bit of a relief, because I had a mother's intuition, if you want to call it that something was wrong with this hearing. An audiologist did show up in the hospital to do a test, but we were already out the door. We had him in a car seat. We were ready to go, and it was quite a traumatic experience, the whole birth. And I was just like, we need to go home. I don't want to do one more test. So for me, I thought, okay, I'm not going crazy. There really is something wrong. For my husband, it was absolutely devastating. And to navigate that as first-time parents is huge. And I think that as you say, I remember the audiologist turning around and he said, "I'm really sorry, but it appears the loss is profound." And in my head going, I've got 4 years of a human physiology degree. What does profound mean? I don't quite understand what profound means. And like looking to my husband and the language, you're so overwhelmed in that moment. By the look on his face, it's not good. But what does profound mean? And definitely asked him that afterwards. But how much went in after that, I'm not really sure. It's almost like a room spinning kind of like, what's that?
Yeah.
So I think that it was scary. If I could tell myself what I know now 5 years ago, or almost 6 years ago, it's such an incredible journey. And yes, it has many ups and downs, but look at where my son is today. So we were incredibly lucky because of COVID. And I know not a lot of people can say that, because COVID was pretty not so nice for most people. And because of COVID, our cochlear implant team decided to push up all pediatric implantations. So at 3 months, he was aided with hearing aids. At the day after he turned 6 months old, he went for his sedated ABR, his MRI CAT scan. And 6 months and 15 days old, and he was being implanted bilaterally with cochlear implants. So, yeah, in the middle of COVID, which is incredible. And he was switched on at 7 months old. Yeah. So he today at 5 years old doesn't really know life without his cochlear implants. And
can you tell me his ages again?
Yes, sorry.
I want to emphasize that. Tell me when he was implanted.
So diagnosis with severe to profound hearing loss was just before 3 months. Immediately aided with the hearing aids. He was then implanted at 6 months, and he was then activated or switched on at 7 months. Yeah.
Okay. This is from a professional perspective, okay? This is understanding, because the early hearing detections of hearing loss and intervention, that is our goal. We have met that goal for you in South Africa, where universal newborn hearing screening is not mandated, as you said.
Yeah.
And yet you were able to get those ages at the most optimal position that we could get, which is earlier, the younger, the better.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And we started AVT at 3 months, where you don't think you can do speech therapy from 3 months of age, but we started our AVT appointments when the day after he was aided with hearing aids.
Okay. So one of the greatest things, there are two things that you mentioned that I would like to ask you more questions about if I could, Bianca. One of which is, how did you do it? We professionals, we choose this profession. We know exactly what we want, what we need to do. Maybe not exactly, but we really try our best to take the research and figure out what can we do to get the best outcomes we can for whatever the parents choose, whatever their desired outcomes are. Now, I'm assuming your desired outcome was for your child to learn to listen and talk with whatever hearing technology that could be given to him. So that was number one. Now, you talked about this feeling that you got when this audiologist asked you, he told you, he says, I'm sorry that this is a profound hearing loss, and you didn't know and what profound meant. So there was, can you talk like that? You mentioned that it was you couldn't process very much after that.
Yes.
But the reality is you did process very quickly, because, we professionals, we can move fast, but we often forget that parents are being forced to move fast in this new world of uncertainty for you. Can you address more of how you felt? Okay, we know how you felt during after the diagnosis was given. How did you deal with that moving forward?
So I think I do remember the very next sentence, maybe 2 sentences afterwards, the audiologist saying, 40 years ago, this would mean your only option would be sign language. Okay. And I remember that sort of sticking there. So you're trying to put all these pieces together in your head going, okay, so that means we have options for him to be able to hear one day. That was sort of trying to go in my head, make sense of that. I think that being first-time parents in kind of the situation that we were in, so a slight bit of context to that story was that we had decided to emigrate to the US. And so Ali was born in November 2019, and we had decided we wanted to leave in March. So we'd already actually sold up our house. We had given notice. I'd closed my business. So there was this added stress of, oh my word, and then COVID hit as well. Okay, so there's quite a lot going on. And I think I hate to use this word because but all you wanted to do was, how can I make my son's life easier? Your initial feeling is just, is it going to be so difficult? Because, I'm going to be honest, I feel like life is already quite challenging. And now we've added another layer to it. So what can we do in order to make his life just a little bit easier? And again, as you said, there's nothing wrong with learning sign language. It's not that. But in order to also be a part of, I want to say, mainstream society, it does make it easier if you are able to communicate just like them. And so there was definitely a lot of that. And I know when I have new parents sort of referred to me to chat about our journey, and they always ask, how did you make the decision? How did you make the decision to get cochlear implants. And my husband and I often talk about this and say, there wasn't really a decision to make. It was like, well, if we can do something for him, this is what we're going to do. And I know a lot of people, again, may disagree with that, but it just flowed. The fact that it happened so quickly, the fact that we didn't have to even fight. That was one part of our journey where there was no advocating. It just happened. So there was another mommy, Ollie, and her daughter had the same due date. And she was born 2 weeks early and Ollie came 2 weeks late. And she was also diagnosed with profound hearing loss bilaterally. And the two of us did, I will say, she contacted somebody at the Tracy Center in the US. And I contacted somebody at OHSU and Takamaksan. And we just chatted to them. And they said exactly what you just said, the earlier the better. And I think we didn't even, as I said, didn't have to advocate that to our team. Our team then came back and said, we've made this decision. So the feeling of relief of being told, actually, we've decided we're going to do this. We're going to push it all up and we're going to do the cochlear implants. And we were like, this is great. Textbook-wise, this is great. And then you put down the phone and you're like, wait, are we doing the right thing? It's just happened so quickly. Even his sedated ADR, CAT scan, and MRI, I remember sitting in the ward waiting for him to wake up, and I figured it would be a day or two before we heard from the surgeon. And she phoned immediately. I pick up the phone and she says, everything looks great. His anatomy looks great. We've booked it for 2 weeks from now. And I was like, 2 weeks from now? That's, uh-oh. And then, of course, it's the idea of your child going and having surgery. And then that's when you start to, but that's the fear aspect of it that sort of kicks in. Is this the right idea? Is he not too young to put him under such a long surgery?
Yeah.
But I think those around us would have also said, we felt everything as we went through it. There were lots of tears of going back and forth, and it's easier. Hindsight is so much easier to say it was the best decision that we could have ever made for him. But there's a lot of feelings involved and you have to ride those out. Otherwise, I think you just end up suppressing them. But you feel a lot through those. And you still do. And I know that we'll get into other episodes where we get to talk about how that plays out later on down the journey. But the feelings are much bigger in the beginning of the journey, I feel.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I know this because as from my mom's experience, it was big feelings for her. And even now that I'm a 70s baby, okay? So we can all figure out how old I am. So, and back then, so now we are fast forward to here, and I can still tell you my mom still worries.
Yeah.
And I think as a mother, now I know I still worry. And so I don't think we ever stop worrying. I hate to tell you this, Bianka.
I'm learning that.
But there are some things that I'm learning as a professional. So this podcast is really a learning experience for me as a professional. And I want everybody to know this, because even though I've worked in this profession since 1997, I don't know it all. And I'm constantly trying to figure out what we can do to be better at what we do. And you know where I get the best advice from? Who I get the best advice from? Parents. And when I'm working with adults, I get the best advice from them. And so what I learned from you, from what you've talked about so far, is, the professional used, he said, at the time of diagnosis. And believe me, professionals all around the world, we know we use the jargon. What's the jargon? The professional jargon. Because this is what we learned, and it becomes automatic and it just comes out of our mouth. We can't help it. And we're just like, ah. And if we do use the jargon, and this is my theory, if we use the jargon and the parent is going, what the heck is this person talking about? It's because we're nervous, we're scared, we're nervous and we're scared because we don't want to scare you away, and we just do what's most comfortable in that moment, I think. And sometimes what's most comfortable for us as professionals is the language that we had to learn in order to get the good grades on the exam. And so we all say, there is no perfect professional out there. There isn't. We all say things that, that could have come out better, or we may think it was the great way of saying it, but we need to know there are better ways of saying that. So one thing is profound. What is that language? What does that mean? And there are a lot of professionals who have to learn how to use living room language that parents can understand. So what does a profound hearing loss mean? Well, we know that it means, and you know now, that means that without hearing technology, all sounds of speech are not accessible to the child at all. What do I mean by accessible? They can't hear it. They can't, even no matter how hard they listen and try. It's not coming into the brain. And and then I think, okay, so how do we describe that? That's how I would have described it. We call that a profound hearing loss. It is a great, great degree of hearing loss. And then I immediately go into, but there are some things we can do with hearing technology to give this person the ability to hear spoken language so that they could learn to talk, if that is a desired outcome that you have. Because there are some families who want their children to learn sign language, because for whatever reason that might be, for a family from the culturally deaf community, this is, I don't know, I don't want to put, this is a diagnosis that this is a diagnosis that they would take very differently.
Yes.
And everybody takes it differently. Everybody is different.
Yes.
And, sign language is accessible to their children because that is a language that's their native language. That's what they feel the most comfortable with. So, for me, I think that it's wonderful that he said, but there are options. There are options, and it almost brings it back. It almost rescues it, from what I'm thinking, because I could hear myself saying exactly the same thing that audiologist said. And so it's hard for us professionals, really hard, because we're so afraid we're going to scare our families off. That's it, and we don't want to do that, but we do sometimes. And so it's really nice to hear from you how you felt at that moment. How would you have told yourself about, you talked about what the opportunities are, but if you were to take that diagnosis that audiologist gave you, and how would you have liked to have heard it?
I was thinking now while you were speaking, because I think I love that. I've never heard that phrase before. Did you call it living room language?
Living room language. Living room language. There's professional jargon and living room language.
Yeah. So I've never heard that before. And I think I was sitting here thinking, even if because I remember the motion, even if he turned around in his chair and said, "I'm really sorry, it appears he can't hear at all," or something like that, what would I think the reaction would have been the same. Which sounds silly, and this was actually something that came up when you were here in Joburg. The different ways that different parents take information. And I think for me, I need to process. So I would have loved, to be real honest, a piece of paper. I would have loved a piece of paper that explained to me what is profound, and we did get that. About 3 days later, we got the speech banana and that whole thing. But I think I needed to go home with that, even if it didn't make any sense. That it was just a security blanket in that moment, because the way our appointment had worked, it was very late at night. We had load shedding, where we have rolling blackouts here in South Africa. So the audiologist had actually phoned to cancel our appointment. And we said, no, you can't cancel it. We've been waiting weeks for it. And so saw us after hours, gave us the diagnosis, or that the profound, and there are options. Please come back tomorrow morning so we can just retest. So we came back first thing the next morning and did that for 2 days. And it was on that third day that we then sat down and actually looked at everything. And let's be honest, what did I do? I went home and Googled, okay, which wasn't her.
So we all do. I do it. I Google all the time.
So
You can.
And having a 6-month-old baby who breastfeeding, and they say sleep when the baby sleeps, and I'm just sitting on the phone just trying to do as much research as possible. But you're in such a state of fight or flight, if you will, that you're actually not comprehending anything you're reading. And so a concise 1-page document would have been quite amazing, I think, just to take home and say, these are the different levels. It doesn't matter where it is, there are options, and these are the different options that you would be given. So yeah, in an ideal.
I think that's really good. And I think over the next, all the podcasts that we're going to do, there's no right answer. There's no right answer. We just have to get through it with the information that is given to us, because we can't choose it. We just have to let the language come in. And I guess I'm quoting Mel Robbins. I love this woman. We can't control what people say to us, but we can control how we react to it. And I think that is something that I hope we can share in our future podcast, because that's what it came to with my own mother back in the 70s. She figured out when I was 18 months that I might be having trouble hearing. And my hearing loss was, let's use professional language, okay? Well, it was a mild hearing loss at 125 hertz. Okay. What does that mean? That means that I could hear that's where 125 hertz is. So I heard that almost normally. Almost. Okay? Normally, I mean typically. Now, for 250 hertz, which is I had a moderate hearing loss. That means that I could hear it, but I had to be a little bit closer to the speaker in order to hear it well enough to make sense of it. Okay? Then, when it came to which is a little bit of at 125 hertz, where is located, I had what professionals call a mild hearing loss. So whenever somebody said, I could turn around and look at it and find them, even if I was far away. Okay? Then at 250 hertz, which is where ooh is more concentrated around, that was at a moderate hearing loss. That means that if I was far away, I probably would not hear it. But if I was closer to you, like snuggling up and close to you, then I would be able to hear you making that sound, ooh. When it comes to E, which is getting a little bit higher in frequency, that's around 750 hertz. That's where I put E, but not really. But anyway,
Yeah.
At 750 hertz, I dropped down to what we call a severe hearing loss, which means that if I was far away from you, if I am close to you, I would not hear E. I would know you're making a sound because E has many ingredients. E has an ingredient for and so I would catch that ingredient, but not the higher frequency ingredient that makes E sound like E, which is where 2,000 or 3,000 hertz is located. Okay? Now, at 1,000 hertz, which is where ah is, squarely right there, I had a profound hearing loss. Okay? What does that mean? That means I could make ah as loud as an airplane, and maybe I would be. But that's not within our speech. We don't talk as loud as an airplane.
No.
So that's what I mean by a profound hearing loss. And then we go to, which is even higher in frequency, make it as loud as an airplane. I can't hear it. And then, this is interesting. I had a severe hearing loss, which means that if you would get really, 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 really close to me and make a pure tone sound, which usually an element, have you ever shaken keys?
Yes.
And hear that tinkling sound? There's a little bit of that 4,000, 6,000 hertz sound in there, and I could hear that if it was nice and close to me. But if it was further away, forget it. That is why so many people, when they clap their hands, I could turn to them and they would say, there's nothing wrong with their hearing. You're overreacting. But I just was not able to hear enough of the frequencies of speech, enough of the ingredients that make up spoken language for me to learn it like other children could. And so I was and I was babbling, but I wasn't making sense at all. And this was and my mother kind of figured it out when she was playing the piano. She was a pianist, she was a musician. So she noticed that whenever she played in the upper end of the keyboard, I wasn't paying attention. And I loved music. But whenever she played a song like Moonlight Sonata, which is on the lower end of the key, I would come running and I would lay down on the floor by the piano and listen to it and feel the vibrations of it and watch her feet go up and down on the pedal. And she says, I began to realize that you were having some difficulty hearing. And then that started, that was 18 months, another 2 years of begging the doctor to get me in for a hearing test. And so this is where a parent's instinct is so, so important to me. Whenever a parent has an instinct and they come to me for therapy and they say something, 99.9% of the time, it's an instinct that makes sense.
Yeah.
And if you can't figure out how it makes sense, then you need to investigate it. You know what I'm saying? Just because you can't make just because one professional can't make sense of that instinct doesn't mean that that instinct is there and is not true.
Yeah.
Just because that instinct doesn't make sense to you as a professional, it doesn't mean that it's there. You have to figure it out. And if that means talking to other professionals, please do that. Please do that, because parents need to be heard, and they are truly, truly the experts in their children's abilities and the drive to succeed, And anyway, fast forward to 3 years and 11 months, my mother went to the family doctor's office and said, I am not leaving here. This is in the morning of that one day. She says, I am not leaving here until you make arrangements for me to go to this hospital in Toronto and have her hearing tested in the afternoon of today. And so that is what happened. And they tested me twice that afternoon to find a mild to profound hearing loss. That means Karen can hear some speech sounds, but she cannot hear other speech sounds. She cannot. And back then, only body aids were available. And they had just come out with behind-the-ear hearing aids, and they were power hearing aids. And so they fitted me with that, but they said, you're wasting your time, Mrs. Driver, you're wasting your time. And she says, I don't care what you think. And she was told over and over and over again, your daughter is not going to learn to talk ever. And you are going to have to send her away to a school for her to learn sign language and to learn how to read. And she won't go beyond a grade 3 level of reading. And for my mother, sign language for her it's not a bad thing. It wasn't a bad thing. But the thing about my mother is if you tell her child can't do something, which they told her, they made the mistake of telling her that she'll never learn to talk, my mother will turn the world upside down to prove you wrong. And so that's what she did. And she relied on some speech language pathologists one speech language pathologist who had just recently graduated from university, and she didn't know enough about hearing loss to know that it's not going to work. Okay? Traditional therapy is not going to work. And then my mother found Daniel Ling, who was very famous back in our days. He was in Montreal at the time, which is quite a bit of a drive from Toronto. And she got a hold of him, and he came down for a conference in Toronto, and my mother dragged my poor speech language pathologist with her to this conference to have a meeting with him, showed him the audiogram, and he said, okay, this is how you're going to do this. And so I had therapy sessions for 2 hours a week, and 2 hours in the room. My mother was in the room, and then a half an hour with the speech language pathologist with my mother alone to figure out what we're going to do with Karen at home. And I remember spending a half an hour in the waiting room playing with all the Fisher-Price toys. That's why I have so many Fisher-Price toys from the 70s in my therapy room, because I love. And there was so much pushback back in my days, so much pushback. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. And it was all just let her try. If she can't do it, then okay, but I need to see it with my eyes. That was my mother. And, and I see that spirit in every mother that comes to see me, and I don't doubt them. And it's wonderful to see. And without that spirit, without all of those professionals who just went with my mother and just thought, hey, let's give it a try. And that's why I'm here, and that's Ubuntu.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
But that's what it is. I'm here because of so many people, and to think of them would make me cry, and I'm not going to do that. But it's that's what I love so much about the parents who make a decision about what it is that they want for their child, and then they say, "This is what can I do to get there, no matter what it is." And and my thing is, oh, you want your child to learn to use ASL? I'm going to find you the very best I can get. It's not going to be me, but, but if you ever want to think about helping your child learn to listen and talk, to the best of their ability, I'm your gal, I just want to do what you want to do, and I just think there's a lot of, we need to respect the parents' wants and wishes, and we need to help them get the very best. And I'm so glad, Bianca, that you had that opportunity for Ollie. For the Ollie
Pup, yeah. No, and I agree with you, and I think exactly how you speak is what you are as a therapist. That's exactly what we really did experience as well, which I think is quite incredible that I want to say the field is quite small too. So the amount of work and the amount of love that is shown because let's be honest, I mean, your speech therapist becomes and that's traditional speech therapy, but our LSL was we spoke to her every single day in those first 2 years, I almost want to say, because it was, you walk the journey with us. It's exactly that Ubuntu thing. It's not just, here are the tools, this is go home and do this. It's through the ups and downs, the highs and lows, these people are in your life on the journey with you. And I think that's the most incredible part. And your mom was that person who, just like, I feel like I was to a certain extent, who was like, we will get the best. If we're told we need to do this, we'll do this. We were told to read 10 books a day. So we read 10 books a day. People thought we were mad, but we need to read 10 books a day, in order to.
Yeah, and there are some parents that say, I can't do that. And then we go, well, then we'll find a way for you to do it in another way.
Yes.
Whatever feels most comfortable for you. And, and this is something else that is really important for me. Just because we say this and it's hard for the family to do, it doesn't mean that family is going to fail. It is up to us professionals to tailor our recommendations to the family's life, their daily life, because if we don't, that's when it's going to get really rough. And so that's why and I say I need, it's not just me, it's so many therapists, so many professionals around the world. We need the parents. No matter where you are in the stage, we need you, because we truly, you guys know the best. You really, really do. And we have so much to learn from you, and we feel so privileged to be a part of your journey. And you were saying something about professionals being a part of our lives. Well, when it comes to children who are deaf and hard of hearing, children who have hearing loss, whatever way the listener describes it, Yeah. It's a lifelong thing. It's not just for the first 6 years of life. And I think sometimes professionals don't understand the depth, the texture, the sustainability of gratitude and love parents have for these professionals, because the needs of the parents change over the years. And I think for kids with hearing loss, we don't know any differently. We just had a great life. I did a youth, I did a speaker session for a group of youth in the summer, last summer, and it was amazing. And I asked them, I said, what do you think it took for your parents and for professionals to get you to where you are today? They had no clue. They had absolutely no clue. They just said, I wore hearing technology, and I know I had some therapy, but they didn't understand that. And I love that on the one hand, because for them, life was just being lived and in a joyful manner, or maybe in a painful manner. That's life for everybody, right? But they had no clue, but the parents remember. And the parents never forget. They never, ever forget. And they do consider professionals a part of their family. Because I chose this profession as my way of making a living, of living my life and enjoying it. I was very fortunate to have parents who said, your vocation should feel like a vacation too. You should love it. And oh my goodness, I love what I do. And now that I understand, if I were to have a 3-year and 11-month-old child come into my therapy room, a little Karen, mini Karen, and my mama, I would know what it's going to have to take to get to where I am today. And all the professionals are like my family. Every professional that was in my life, I talk to them still on the phone. And it's like, thank you for giving me the opportunity, because if I wouldn't have had the opportunity, I wouldn't have been able to experience really precious moments in my life, like when hearing my daughter as she was being born, as I was giving birth to her, being very quiet, and me getting a little, what's going on here? And then slap, bing, and then the crying, and then the relief that I get, because I know what that cry means. And then I say to her, Emily, it's okay. Mama's here. When the doctors are ready and finished with you, you'll come to me, don't you worry. And she stopped crying.
Yeah.
She stopped crying. And so that to me is my number one favorite moment in my life. And gosh, it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened if I wouldn't have had Ubuntu.
I think that is incredibly valid and very true. Yes.
But that's my moment, And, you can have moments like that for ASL, but if you're going to do it in ASL, it's a different, more, just as rich, just as beautiful. But it's different, And you want to be able to be fluent with your child, as a person who is deaf and who uses sign language and make those signs come out. And oh my goodness, you see those beautiful moments in the birthing suite with them too. It's just different. And just because it's different doesn't mean different, that it doesn't it's not as precious as your experiences, And so this is what I hope everybody gets to enjoy out of our podcast is those conversations and those different perspectives that, can come out and you're gonna have lots of those moments today. Yeah.
Brought me to tears, Karen. I cried first.
I don't mean to, but it's the way it is. It's
Absolutely.
just the way it is, and I have a lot of gratitude to my parents and to the professionals who worked with me, and I just want to see, and I just want to be one of the world of amazing professionals that we have, every single one of them.
Yes.
Even those ones who challenge us, they teach us.
Yes.
They teach us and they give us that moment, and and I love your boys. A beautiful blonde.
Thank you.
The kind of blonde hair I wish I could have naturally, but I don't. Okay.
I love and I think, Karen, to sort of just end off that Ubuntu aspect of it, it's exactly that. It's those moments, and I feel in our journey, we've had so many of them where the first time he said mama, the first time I truly believe he heard me say I love you and understood what I was saying to him. The first time I realized he really gets theory of mind and I don't need to worry so much about him. And that's a whole different conversation we can have at one point. But being able to express himself, to tell me I feel frustrated, Mom. And the amazingness of that. I don't think as a parent to a child using cochlear implants, little sounds, it's just amazing. You are dumbfounded all the time. A very silly example, and it was recently. We lie down every night and then he brushes his teeth and then I brush his teeth just to make sure we get everything. And his nails were a little bit longer than usual, and as he moved his fingers across the pillow, it made a sound. And he was like, Mom, what was that? And I said, what was what? And he said, and he did it again, and he was like, it's strange since we lie like that every night, but he'd never heard that sound, and how appreciative and excited he was about such a silly sound. He can talk for 12 hours a day, but this little silly sound that brought so much joy to his face, to hear that and to understand where it came from. It was amazing. And I think as a parent, the Ubuntu aspect of this goes even further than even our therapists. I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful for this incredible technology that has given my child the chance to hear things, maybe not like I do, but to hear things, because we don't know how he hears them, but in his way, and to be able to share that. And I think that's just incredible.
Yeah.
And as you say, had we gone the sign language only route, it would have been that way. And it's so funny. I wanted to sign with my child before I knew that Ollie had a hearing loss. And because I had learned in college how great it was for your child to learn how to do that. Exactly. So we started signing right away, and we still joke very often because the sign that he started around 5 months was this. And we obviously was speaking all the time. And so I would always say, do you want the other one? Meaning, do you want me to switch over to the other breast so you could have more milk? So the word that went with this wasn't milk. He used to call it the udder. So he would say the udder one.
And you know what? From my perspective, as an auditory verbal therapist, I love sign language and love it when parents use it, because that gives me really important information that this baby has the ability to use language to communicate. because we never know if that's going to be affected with the diagnosis of hearing loss. What else is going on? Because communication is not just hearing; it's cognition. It's theory of mind, which is being able to take other people's perspective. The best way to explain it is, well enough to play a prank on someone. That's what theory of mind is. You got to have that. Got to trick them. And when you see that in a baby is 5 months of age, who's able to use sign language, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I'm all ready for this. Yeah. Gonna be, this is gonna be a nice, smooth journey for a therapist and for a parent.
Yes.
Exciting one too, so.
Absolutely. Well, I think as far as the way forward for our podcast, I think I'm really excited about everything that we get to share from an Ubuntu point of view, and just we've only touched on a tiny bit of each one of our journeys, and we haven't even got, we get to dissect the rest of it and chat loud.
We will, and we'll get to it, right, Bianca? We have lots of time to get to it, and we'll get to it with you as part of our conversation as well. So,
yes. So thank you very much for joining us today as we start our own journey, if I can put it that way, of Ubuntu, of diving into hearing language, communication and connection, whatever that may mean. And we hope to see you at the next one when we get to really dive in a little bit deeper into our personal journeys. So that's it for today's episode of Ubuntu, hearing, communication, language, and connection. Thanks for spending time with us.
We hope our conversation sparked new ideas and gave you some comfort or simply made you feel connected.
We'd love to hear your story. Reach out, share your experiences, and keep the conversation going.
Remember, we're just sharing our perspectives and our respective journeys. There's no right or wrong path, only the one that's right for you.
Until next time, take care and stay curious.